I've talked to a lot of agency owners in the past few weeks as I've been putting out more content about navigating this AI era. And as an agency, it's hard. It's hard as an agency navigating this because you've got the KPI metrics of yesterday, but we've got the buyer's behavior changes of tomorrow happening today. And that's what I really want to feature and double down on today. When we think of the transitions that need to happen in our marketing, all of it is just acquisition focused and how to grow your business with marketing. And like you could throw whatever label on it you want. It is different, but it's the same concepts overall that we really need to double down on. Some of the big changes, I heard Rand Fishkin on a recent podcast episode. And one of the things that he brought up was how like you've got to meet people where you are. Now he has a platform, Sparktoro, that helps you find people and where they hang out. So like somewhat self-serving potentially, but he generally puts out good content and also is highlighting a very important thing that how people are finding information is changing, but also where they are finding that information is changing. And so when we think about that transition, we also need to really think about the fact of like, how are we going to measure it? And the reality is, I think we're going back to like Mad Men era, like where we have to operate and do marketing on hunches again. I think creativity is going to come back. And when we start to consider that transition, we have to figure out how to break free of the chains of some of this data collection in regards to reporting. And we have to make sure that we're willing to take chances in order to get a result. Comes with confidence and comes with the comfort of experimentation. But it also means that we need to be hedging some bets in regards to what the future looks like. And this is what I think the future looks like. I think that AI agents are already helping folks do research to figure out who the right agency would be, or the right company would be, or the right decision would be. I think that there is an assault on the top of the funnel. And if we talk about the younger generation and them using ChatGPT and AI tools as an operating system, then I think we're going to see a very different way that they get their info. But if we look at B2B buyers today and them using AI tools to help them do discovery and do research overall to like validate opinions, the reality is like this is happening today. And so when we start to consider where that information exists and how it's measured, I think a lot of the same principles of SEO come into play, except there is less on-page SEO and more off-page SEO in regards to what we need to think about. But there's a kicker. Every page needs to be thought of as being a complete representation of your company. Every page needs to have a very like wholesome overview of the organization and what you like, how your business is showing up, whether it's on Reddit and helping people in the community with the correct answers, whether it's promoting on a press release the information about your company, whether it's doing SEO the traditional way, but making sure that you spend the extra time on some schema markup. We've got to make sure that we have all of our syndications that are complete. When we think of schema and we think of like structured data, we want to make it really easy for there to be validation. But furthermore, we need to make sure that there's outside influences, things that aren't on our website that all point and have the same general direction. The nature of the exercise of marketing is changing. We do need to meet people where they are. We always have, but like the conversion and focus to drive to our website might not be the first primary move. It might be the helpful, relevant information. We need to track engagement on different platforms and create different areas. Maybe you need to be on Medium again, and you need to be in Reddit and engaging with community without trying to drive them to your website to convert. Because at the end of the day, that hook is going to be an LLM giving someone your answer, attributing it to you, and them seeing how many results were from Impulse Creative. And so this webinar we've got next week on the Clear Framework, you can go clearframework.ai, is going to go through the things that are necessary for the humans, but also the AI agents. It's actually for your entire marketing. And so when we think of how you should engage in different communities, when we think of how complete your Google profile should be, even if you're not a local business, if we want to think about all the different places where your brand shows up, search your brand and do a site search for your brand, for your domain, but say not impulsecreative.com or not your domain. And so this exercise that we're going to go through is changing the very way that marketing happens. It doesn't mean that we need to not report on it, but what it does mean is we need to have a detailed list of metrics that matter. And what I mean by that is it's so easy to use the metrics of yesterday, but we're dealing with the marketing of tomorrow. And so if we break down the metrics that you should be using, you should be getting much, much deeper into on the revenue side of things. The only way for you to know whether a campaign is functioning and working is to see the indicators of success. The indicators of success in a B2B business is going to be phone calls and sales meetings, and you might get some origination from it. But the reality is we really need to think about how we're going to drive the conversations with our senior leadership around marketing and how we're going to get budget to experiment while also showing the momentum that we have in the past. We've got a really strong transition that needs to happen over, I would say, the next 18 months. And that's not a lot of time for an established company to put trust in their marketing team to be able to make that pivot, see results, but also understand whether or not things are working. So you're going to need to really focus on hedging some bets. You're going to see a lot of leaders who have never had to in their entire career. I mean, I'm talking, we've had hard data for like 20 years. And there's people that they've only ever known Google Analytics. This is in a similar fashion of where like you're not going to have as much info, but you're going to need to start measuring things in a different way. So is that impressions in your videos summarized all up? Is that making sure that your campaigns and your overall engagement you're going to have to figure out ways to measure that value coming across, but you're also going to have to change the way that you market on these different tools. You might need to think of them as ways to get eyeballs. Back to the basics of marketing, right? So as you start to think about how you can still attract people on inbound, which I do believe is going to be like a vast majority. I don't think it's 80% anymore, but I do think it's probably 50, 60% the way we've done marketing in the past. But that number is going to shift very, very intentionally, especially as you consider AI mode coming across, and especially as you start thinking about how people are starting to believe and engage with large language models. That's going to change things a lot. The one area that is going to completely transform people's responses is Google's AI mode. And when we think of, there's a lot of chatter on Twitter right now of folks that are like really upset because there's no attribution in AI mode. And I think they might have fixed it because it was a bug. But at the end of the day, like, we're not going to get access to the data that we had. So we're not going to be able to make decisions the way we made decisions before. If Google decides to flip the switch and make AI mode the default in Google search, which I think we're a little bit of ways away from that change is going to happen literally overnight. And that's not something that is going to wait for a customer or a human to get comfortable with. That's a decision that a conglomerate like Google could just press the button to make it happen. And I think we're starting to see some of that behavior change. There is a search engine journal posted something that like folks are seeing entire questions and like essentially prompts in Google searches right now. And it's just people are starting to use it that way. That could be a really big signal to, once that starts to be more apparent, then maybe Google starts to make that pivot heavier. So just food for thought. Start thinking about your marketing and start questioning everything. If you see results down, are results down because you did something different? If the answer is no, then that means that something else is different. And you're going to need to peel back the layers of the onion. And I think you should start talking to your management about having this experimental fund of budget where you can start trying out things, trying new platforms. If it were me, I'd be getting on Reddit and start thinking about how you would market, but not necessarily trying to drive traffic to your website. I think that playbook's slowly going to start to go away, but really starting to engage. I'm not saying don't do it, for the record, but I'm saying we're going to want to really kind of engage the different areas that people hang out more often. All right, that's their food for thought today.